So, what's going on, guys? You guys are home right now? You don't have to go to school till Tuesday. Lucky. Man, I have to be at work. Oh. Oh. Sorry. Man. Guess that's what happens when you lean in your chair. Now I know why I tell you always to keep your chair on the floor, because you guys, that could happen to you. So 4 on the floor, it's always a good idea. Yeah, we're going to talk about direct variation. You guys may have noticed, some of you noticed, that we are skipping section 4.3. It's kind of an odd section. Doesn't really necessarily add any value to what we're talking about when we talk about slope. So we are not going to do that. Instead, we're just going to go to 4.4. So you guys can follow along on page 213 in your books. I'm a little too old to be falling out of my chair. You guys, that hurt a little bit. So I'm going to make sure I keep all 4 legs of this chair on the ground for the rest of this video. Yeah, direct variation. We're talking about that now, and we've kind of looked at it already. Direct variation is when we have equations that look like this, y equals mx. So we have a lot of different names for what's going on here. M in this equation is our slope. It's also our unit rate. We can also call it our constant of variation and the constant of proportionality. So this equation is when the relationship between y and x is proportional. And a proportional linear relationship is called a direct variation. Okay, so in words, direct variation looks like this. It's a linear relationship in which the ratio of y to x is a constant m. We say that y varies directly with x. In symbols, it looks like this, y equals mx, or m is y over x. And our example would look like this. So we've actually looked at equations like this, but now instead of just starting at 0, 0 and going up, most of the problems we've looked at have only been in the first quadrant, but this line continues. Now, one thing you should notice about direct variation is that as x increases, y also increases. So the bigger x is, the bigger y gets as well. So that's one thing with direct variation, because there's something called indirect variation. But with direct variation, as x increases, y also increases. And they vary, they increase at a constant rate. So in this case, for every x that goes up, y is doubled. So if x is 1, y is 2. If x is 2, y is 4. If x is 3, y is 6. So that constant of variation just tells you kind of the relationship between x and y there. So we're going to look at a few examples in this section. There are a few things you have to do. So if you want to go to page 214 and follow along on this example, the example here, this graph represents the cost of gymnastics lessons, and it varies directly with the number of sessions. So whenever you see this term, it also means it's proportional. So the cost varies directly or is proportional to the number of sessions shown in the graph. Excuse me. And you have to find this equation, the direct variation equation. So it's really not different than what we've done before, because we've talked about how to find the slope or the unit rate. So the slope in this case, when x is 1, y is 10. So you guys already know that the slope is 10, so we can just write the equation as y equals 10x. We can also use the slope formula. We see that this goes up 10 and over 1. So there's a few ways you can find the slope. Now we've got a lot of different methods we've used. We've said that when x is 1, y is 10, or if we go rise over 1, we have all these methods now for finding the slope. And now that we have the slope, all we have to do is write the equation. Now check this out. M, 10, M, 10, M. Oh, look at that. See that? Here's the direct variation equation. Replace m with 10. Technology is so exciting, isn't it, guys? Okay, so the equation is y equals 10x. Now we're going to find the constant of variation, or slope. So the constant variation or slope is 10, and this is the unit rate. So the cost per session is $10. So if we go back here, again, it's really the same thing we did in the first section with proportional relationships. The unit rate or constant of proportionality or constant of variation is 10, and we would say $10 per session. So it's not really anything new, it's just kind of new terminology. So instead of saying it's proportional, we say it varies directly. Instead of saying necessarily just unit rate, we would say constant of variation, but they're the exact same thing, and we find them and interpret them the exact same way. If we want to write the equation, this is on page 2, or actually take a second, pause, and do the check problem on page 216. So this one, again, you're going to write the equation and then find the constant of variation, which is the slope, and interpret it. So exactly the same thing we did in section 4.1, just new terminology. So do 216, and now that you've unpaused, look at example 2 on page 217. The cost of peanuts varies directly with the weight or is proportional to the weight, same thing. At a local grocery store, 2 pounds costs $5.80. We want to write a direct variation equation to represent this relationship, then identify the constant of variation and interpret its meaning. So again, identify the slope or the constant of proportionality or the unit rate. It's the exact same thing as the constant of variation. So first, let's find the unit rate. If it costs $5.80 for 2 pounds, then how much is it for 1 pound? And if we just divide that, then we see that it would be $2.90. We could put that extra decimal there. So the unit rate, again, is when X is 1. So when the pounds is 1, what is the cost? $2.90. So our unit rate is $2.90, or 2.9. So we can write the equation and replace M with 2.9. That's all we have to do there. All right, is that done? Okay. Now, find the constant of variation and interpret its meaning. Well, it's kind of silly because we had to find it to write the equation. So we don't really have to find it again. You just have to remember that it's the same thing. It's 2.9. It is the unit rate. And 2.9 represents the cost per pound. So it's $2.90 per pound, which again, we already kind of answered at the beginning. So it's just redundant, kind of asking the same thing over and over again. So now that we have the equation, though, you can use it to find, let's say, the cost of 7 pounds of peanuts. Because now that I have this equation, the whole point is to create the equation to use the equation. So I know how much it costs per pound. Well, what if I want 7 pounds of peanuts? I would just do 2.9 times 7 and go from there. All right, so on page 218, you guys pause and do that check problem at the top of page 218. And now that you have done that, so again, hopefully you see that the unit rate is just going to be cost per week. So figure out how much she, or like, not cost, but like dollars per week, I should say, because that's how much she's earning. So dollars per week. So again, you'll divide to find that slope there, and we can go over that in class. On page 219, we're going to also be able to write the equation from a table, and we did this, so it's just like we did, I think it was still 4.1, where we had to find the slope from the table. So Aubrey is baking cookies, and for every 2 cups of oats, she uses 4 cups of flour, 4 cups, 8, so on and so forth. We want to find the constant of variation. So now we know that it varies directly, or it's proportional. So varies directly, proportional, basically they mean the same thing. But we can find the slope just like we did in, I think it was 4.1, yeah, 4.1 or 4.2. It might have been part of 4.2 where we had the table, yeah, where we had the table, and we just picked 2 points. So if I pick any 2 points, then I could subtract the y values and subtract the x values. And so that's what we're going to do here to find the slope. We'll subtract the y values from the first 2 points and subtract the x values. So you see here, 8 minus 4 over 4 minus 2. Remember, y over x. Some of you still keep forgetting this. Y over x. And 8 minus 4 over 4 minus 2 is 4 over 2 or just 2. I don't know why it never lets me just plug this number in. All right, 2. Accept, check answer, okay? So we find the slope using a table, so that's nothing new. Now that we have the slope, plug it into the equation. So direct variation equation, proportional equations look just like this. We just put the 2 there. And then find the constant and interpret its meaning. So the constant of variation is 2. This means that, 2. This means that the unit rate is 2 cups of flour per cup of oats. 2 y units, cups of flour, for 1 x unit, 1 cup of oats. So every 1 cup of oats, we use 2 cups of flour. So 1 is our x, 1 is our unit. 2 cups for every unit, every cup of oats there. Okay, so hopefully you guys see that it's really like the exact same thing that we just did in section 1. A little bit of section 2, finding slope mixed in there, but the only new thing is some new terminology. So on page 220, I want you guys to do that check problem. All right, so you should have all 3 check problems done in this section. I should see notes complete from 213 to 220. And oh, I think I hurt my back falling out of this chair. So hopefully you guys learned from my mistake and keep all the chair legs on the floor so you don't get hurt. Enjoy your long weekend, and I will see you guys on Tuesday. Peace out.